Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to introduce Helen Crossan, who's the director of the Cold Spring Harbor Library and our hostess.
Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure to have all of you here today. I have to ask a question, and you don't have to be honest. Raise your hand if you have a library card in your wallet today. Well, thank you very much. There are 110 public libraries on Long Island. So just about everybody around this table should probably be living in a place that has a library. And if you haven't been there recently, I recommend you check it out. Because the response I have had today from all of you is, gee, I didn't know libraries looked like this. So thank you very much for being here today. And by all means, find your home library and check it out. You might be really surprised about what you find there. In fact, I'm sure you will be. Lots of libraries, well, all the 110 libraries on Long Island have an annual budget vote. For this community, the library budget vote is April 8th. Most libraries do vote on that day across Long Island. Some do vote with their school districts in May. So by all means, take a look for that and go out and vote for your library budget. We have two programs coming up here I want to plug. I told Mitch I'd do this in 1 minute. I'm talking. The first one is at the end of March, and there's a copy of this notice on the table outside. Please take it. It's called Start the Conversation, Save a Life. This is about our youth. This is about drugs. This is about alcohol. This is about risk behavior. It's a whole panel, and it's going to happen here at the end of March. We know about the heroin epidemic. We know about the marijuana, the coke, et cetera, the pills, and we know the kids are using them. And this program is for the kids, for the parents, to learn about the signs, the symptoms, the treatments, so that our children have a future. So please make an effort, help me spread the word about this program. If you want me to send you a copy of the flyer via email, leave me your business card and I'll gladly do that for you. Hope to see some of you here on March 27th. The next program dovetails beautifully with that March 27th event, and that's April 23rd. And this will be the fourth program in the Community Conversation series that maybe some of you have been reading about in the Long Islander. This is a program that partnered with Leadership Huntington Foundation, the town of Huntington, the Chamber, all the libraries in the town of Huntington. And we created this series called Community Conversations. The previous programs all led to this one, each one talking about the different issues of life, work, and family in the suburbs. And the next group of people that we need to hear from are from that next generation. The kids in high school now, the kids in college now, who are wondering where they're going to live, how they're going to live, how they live on what, how they can maintain a quality of life they've become accustomed to. Mitch had a great quote in a story in Newsday the other day, just on this subject. My town of Oyster Bay saw a 50% deduction in that young age group on Long Island in the last 10 years. And I see it living in Oyster Bay. I see it feels like I'm the youngest one there. That's saying something. So please come and hear to what the children would like to see their futures like on Long Island, because it's our future too. If you, I talked about libraries for a minute. I just want to mention also some of the services that we offer, and that would be e-books. All the libraries in Nassau and Suffolk County have e-books available to you. So if you've got an iPhone, an iPad, by all means stop buying them and borrow them for nothing. Meeting rooms such as this one. I'm delighted to have all of you here today. If any of you have other business groups that you'd like to have meet here, we have a meeting room application on our website. There's a small fee for booking the room, but I think it's very manageable and approachable for all of you. And we're very happy to have you here today. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Okay, we're about to get down to business, but first, I want to thank our sponsor, Expose Your Business, Mark. We have the Long Island Commercial Real Estate Expo on March 18th at the Hilton. And the new issue, Building Arts and Real Property issue that we're here for today, will launch at that event, and we're having the launch party afterward. So thank you all for joining me this afternoon, and excuse me for reading, but I'm a writer, not a speaker. The corridor has a new strategic alliance.
I can't hear you, Barbara.
Oh, okay. The corridor has a new strategic alliance. I'd like to introduce you to the Village Connection, Jim Savali. Say hello. We think that this is a great fit because Jim is the fun side of the corridor. And I think that what we will do is expand our markets and offer you a wider variety of advertising. So thank you so much. As you know, the purpose of this forum is to provide the content for our Building Arts and Real Property issue. Among the topics we hope to learn more about today are land use, new laws affecting building projects, progress after Superstorm Sandy, and how Startup New York will affect the purchase of new buildings. Our panel of experts today, let me start with Eric Alexander. Eric is a working class hero. He's the real deal. The executive director of Vision Long Island, whose mission is to promote more livable, economically sustainable, and environmentally responsible growth on Long Island through smart growth. Eric is a master at building consensus and creating a positive environment where our voices can be heard through even the most tumultuous battles. We understand that Mr. Alexander has actually moved heaven and earth to overcome such obstacles. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
And the rest of the panel.
And the rest of them.
Thank you.
And the Oscar.
The rest of your questions.
David Leno is a partner at Ruskin Moscow Koltushek, PC, and a member of the firm's real estate department, and chairs the zoning and land use practice group, which will come in handy in this conversation. He also serves in the IDA and Municipal Development Incentives, Commercial Lending, and Environmental Practice Group. So we have a nice match there. Mitch Pally is the CEO of the Long Island Builders Institute. He is also the Suffolk County representative to the board of the MTA. His influence on the industry's well-being on Long Island cannot be overstated, and the Long Island Builders Institute is a moving force in accomplishment and development. Dave Panetta recently joined Cushman and Wakefield as executive director and broker manager. He was previously a principal of Oxford and Simpson since 1994 and with the firm since 1988. Is that right, David?
Yeah.
He is considered to be one of Long Island's leading commercial real estate brokers and market experts. Interestingly, his background was as a computer engineer. Andrew Salek is Nassau Educators Federal Credit Union's business loan officer. Please excuse me, I can't see. Where he evaluates the financial needs and structures loans for its members, primarily businesses in the $1 to $10 million market. He is adept in commercial real estate and business acquisition. I am honored to be in the presence of so many stellar overachievers. Thank you for joining me. So, gentlemen, let's get started. Mr. Panetta, how's business?
Business. We're coming off of a sort of like a strange time in history, and the future history books will, I guess, pass judgment if it was a good thing or a bad thing. But over the past 6 years, lenders, we can talk about that, have been kind of doing this delay and pray or extend and pretend that we've all been hearing about, where loans are, teetering, where they're coming due and can't be refinanced on the same metrics that there were previously. So what they've decided to do, and part of our federal government has helped with that as well, is instead of like what they did back in the 90s, which was the first line of defense to that was to foreclose, and then the lenders were taking back properties. There was a bigger drop, but the whole process got over quicker, is what the feeling is. So what we've done this time is and I know one of the properties that I own was kind of caught into this. It was a building I bought in 2007. We were paying the mortgage taxes, paying everything. The building was cash flowing, but the mortgage came due, and under the new metrics, the way that they are now appraising properties and the reserves they need, it wasn't something that that we would have to come up with another $4 million on an $11 million building, to keep. So, but the lending institution said, okay, we'll extend you for 18 months, and that was long enough for us to, turn the property around. We had a big tenant that left, and paid off the note, got it refinanced, and it's been stabilized ever since. So I think from that point, it's been very successful. But the feeling is it has extended this recession, depression, or whatever it is that we're in exactly right now. The office market now, I'm a corporate real estate broker, so I'm really dealing with properties that are more like a Melville versus a Huntington Village. So that's sort of the perspective that I'm coming from. When the economy started tanking down, there's A-class buildings, B-class, C-class, and A-class is just a nicer building. Like this library would be an A-class library. So there's always a flight from the A-class to the B and C when the economy tanks because it's generally cheaper. What we have seen in the fourth quarter of 2013 is the flight's going back towards the A again. So when people's leases are coming due, the prices that they were paying back in 05, 6, and 7 are now dramatically less in the A class. So they're jumping back in to take advantage of the low rates and get into the bigger, better locations. The biggest markets here on the island from the corporate side to get hit is Lake Success and Jericho markets. They've had some big users like Canon. So here over in Huntington, we've had a benefit of Canon moving in here as far as jobs, building, but it created a vacancy, pretty big vacancy over in Lake Success. CMP Publications is also a company that's moved out over at Lake Success. But the good news is for people that are out here in Suffolk, back in the 90s, the area that got hit the worst was Melville, because they had National Westminster that moved out, got bought over, and a lot of other big users. Astoria Federal Bank moved out of there and left 200,000 square feet. So I guess every time there's a downturn, there's one area that gets hit worse than others. The biggest driver right now is healthcare. There's a company, Pro Health, and people don't realize, everybody thinks North Shore LIJ is the biggest employer in healthcare, and it's actually Pro Health, and they're based out of Lake Success as well. We're seeing more and more of these healthcare service providers coming locally. Even right here in Huntington Village, next to Panera Bread, there's a Pro Health pediatric, urgent care, coming up. So we're seeing more and more of that, and that's putting some pressure on the retail. Retail has rebounded nicely, but when new medical uses are now going into retail places, now starts driving up the rents and decreases the supply that you have for retail as well. Long Island has done very well compared to the region, so compared to Jersey, Connecticut, Westchester, and the reason being is it's so hard to get things approved here. So if you want to build a new office building or build anything, it's a long and arduous entitlement process. So that has helped us during this time. We had some sublease space to absorb, but there wasn't a lot of new buildings that popped up that we had to also absorb. Nassau County is having an especially tough time with real estate and taxes. Rents haven't gone up a lot here on Long Island, even over the past 20 years, but taxes have gone up a lot. So take example, an industrial building in Nassau County, like Plainview or something. Rents would be $6 a foot, taxes would be $4 of that. So the landlord's getting $2 a foot in rent. So it's very, very difficult to sell properties, very difficult to buy properties. There have been transactions, but it's more driven upon, sort of like portfolio diversification. So there's people or individuals, companies that own a lot of other types of assets, maybe a very successful real estate company, a successful company that's now trying to get into real estate, and they're in stocks and bonds and whatever else. So that's keeping the returns very, very tight. Some new changes that we'll see going forward is the IDAs, Industrial Development Agencies, have been extremely aggressive out here, and it's really from the, the mantra of our, Cuomo, Governor Cuomo. We have seen a big focus on TODs, which is transit-oriented development, and the development of downtowns. And we, here again in Huntington, we've got some great examples with Avalon Bay, construction of some 400 rental units by the train station, and Renaissance downtowns, their efforts going forward. And I think they're breaking ground on something down by the train tracks as well on a couple of properties. So that's actually has kind of gone through the planning stage and now into the realization stage.
Is that Huntington you're talking about?
Huntington Station. We've seen other projects in Wyandanch, and that's under construction, as well, and Heartland. So what TOD is, you're near a train station. So you walk to the train, you don't need a car, then you go into the city, presumably come back. So that's a transit-oriented development. An EOD, employment-oriented development, is part of what I'm doing on a committee for Huntington right now with Melville. So we're looking at land use within Melville, which traditionally are 6-acre, 100,000 square foot office buildings. So we're looking at some of those buildings, some of the antiquated design, some of the land that's available there, to look at putting rental apartments, retail, some other uses, and trying to create more of a downtown there as well. So with the employment-oriented district, you leave your apartment and you're walking to your job. So you're kind of cutting out that transit part because it's right there amongst the employers. In Real Estate 101 is employers go where employees are. So if we constantly are losing our youth to other areas, whether it's Long Island City, Hoboken, or wherever, not only are we going to see employers not come here, but we're going to start seeing them leave here. So that certainly, will affect all of us no matter what business sector we're in. And lastly, there's been a bit of a change. If you remember, maybe 10 years ago, we heard that, people will be hoteling, working from home. There'll be remote, access into companies, and there'll be less people physically in an office. So that put a big scare into everyone that there'll be now people need less office space. The early adopters like Apple Computer, Google, Yahoo are now reversing that trend and finding out that it's not very effective to have their employees off-site, that they're a lot more productive, there's a lot more synergies to have them on-site. Also the whole open landscape thing where we got rid of offices and now everybody's in a cubicle or an open landscape, they're doing away with that as well. So we'll start seeing a little bit of a ratchet up in the needs as the mid-level adopters and the late adopters start following what the early adopters are doing and going back to what we would know as the more traditional landscape for the office. And that's it. Thank you.
What do you want me to say? I thought David said everything.
Actually,
Have some cookies. Oh, you like
the
it?
conversation that I'd like to pick up, this is an open conversation.
Okay.
So everybody is
Good.
invited to join in. And one of the things that David mentioned was the transit-oriented development.
Right, yes.
So I think that might be Eric's expertise, and David Leno, land use, and of course Andrew in financing it.
You can't have transit-oriented development without transit, right, Eric?
So why don't we
Always.
start
Put it in
with
Magdalen.
that, and let's have an open conversation and see how we will.
Well, I mean, there's no question that transit-oriented development has become a main focus of new residential, multifamily, mixed-use developments on the island. People are finally beginning to realize that the single-occupant automobile is not necessarily the panacea it once was intended to do, and that many people do not want that lifestyle of, Eric and I always have a discussion. My definition of smart growth always is if I have to get into a car to get a bottle of milk, it's not smart growth. It's just growth. And that's not necessarily the best thing to have. So many of the villages and towns, probably 20 years behind New Jersey, but finally are beginning to realize that development opportunities near the train stations, which are beneficial, not just for people who work in the city. You come out of it, obviously some people enjoy that because they can walk to the train and hopefully pay because I need the money and then get into the city in that regard. But even those people who work on the island can use the train to get to other parts of the island, or Brooklyn and Queens without going all the way to Manhattan, or just for that kind of lifestyle and that mixed-use kind of lifestyle, separate from the lifestyle of the single-family home. So you have places like, there's always been places on the island that have had that, Great Neck being one of them, Port Jeff for a part of it. But now, most of the villages and towns, whether it's Wyandanch, along the main line where we're expanding service, and will be by 40% the next 3 years, those facilities have seen that that's a great opportunity to do it. So you go from Wyandanch, which is right outside the train. Actually, you can start at Farmingdale, which is under construction now, and they're building mixed-use development right across from the train station. Wyandanch has already started. Heartland, which is just up the road from Deer Park Station, is in its final permitting process with the town of Islip. There's opportunities in central Islip, but those have not been progressing as fast. And then you get to Ronkonkoma, which of course is the largest train station on Long Island, and the development there that Tritech is going to put in, on the north side of the station with 1,400 apartments and everything else that goes along with it. And then you have other places, whether it's Port Jeff, Patchogue is right by the train station, opportunities in Valley Stream, opportunities, we've talked about the Baldwin issue, Rockville Center, the Avalon Bay project, which is within walking distance of the Rockville Center train station. So, Long Island Index did a very good analysis 2 years ago of parking opportunities by the train stations, and most of those places the railroad does not own. In most of those cases, the town or the village owns the parking lot, so their ability to develop it while keeping the same number of parking spaces is an integral part of the discussion. But I think, there's been a lot of progress made. There will be more coming forward, and what did I say? We'll see. Huntington Station is a perfect example, with Avalon Bay by Huntington Station and the other work that Renaissance is trying to do. The village of Hempstead, with what they're trying to do there with Renaissance, even going all the way out to downtown Riverhead with a couple of projects that have already been done and a couple of more that are in the permitting process in the town. So, that has become a major focus of development opportunities on the island. And, people say to me all the time, well, that's going to destroy the single-family communities on the island. I look at it completely differently. It's going to complement the single-family communities on Long Island, because sooner or later, I'm going to want to sell my house. Who am I going to sell it to? The only opportunities I'm going to sell it to are people who are already here, and they're going to be living in the transit-oriented development, then have children, decide at some point they want the single-family home like we've all enjoyed, and move into that. So it's a complement to the single-family home communities, not in competition to it at all. And I think more and more Long Islanders, and especially more and more Long Island communities and more Long Island elected officials, understand that at the moment, and I think you're going to see more and more of that as we go forward. Especially, there are places where we'd love to see it, Hicksville being one, and there are other places where there are large opportunities because there's large expanse. One thing Long Islanders love is large parking lots, and one thing Long Islanders hate is large parking lots. And the ability to use those lots and that land in a more productive use, I think is something that we all have to look at as we go forward.
I think one thing that you raised in your comments, when the Regional Plan Association did their report, I think you participated in it, Eric, I know you participated in it at the end of last year. There was one startling fact that came out of that report that was focusing on the shortage of rental housing on Long Island. And the fact that 55% of 20 to 34-year-olds still live with their parents or an older relative. I mean, that's like a startling...
Assuming they live on Long Island at all.
Yeah, it's a startling number, and it really indicates that, you know, multifamily rental housing is something that's definitely a necessity and is needed. And specifically with regard to transit-oriented development, our firm was lucky enough to work with Eric also in connection with Mill Creek Residential. And that was a great project in West Hempstead. And what it involved was, number one, you had a very mobilized public, because there was for lack of a better word, a very seedy hotel.
Seedy.
Probably the right word. And it was an eyesore. The owner of the hotel even wanted to be out. It was really something that needed to be changed. It was called the Courtesy in West Hempstead. And what happened was you had the public come together. You had the politicians realize this. And you have, you know, a spur, the Long Island Railroad backs right up to the facility, and I think the occupancy rates now of that facility they're almost full.
Aren't they building another facility another project right by it?
In downtown Hempstead also.
Right, okay.
So it's interesting. If you build, they will come. It's a project that really had all the elements. It had the politicians, it had the community, it had everyone agreeing that this would be good for the region. I think it was.
Still on TOD. I mean, I would just say on the TOD topic, it's a good time to be into downtown issues from where we've been. I mean, let's just reel back a little bit. When our organization formed in '97, we were starting to talk about mixed use. People were like, we don't want to hear about this. People aren't going to do this. People aren't going to support it. And it took a number of years before we even find developers willing to actually put in a plan or put in an application. So from 2001 to 2005, there were 3 projects totaling 300 units in TOD housing. From 2006 to the present, there have been 7,800 units approved. As of today, there's a little over 10,000 units in the hopper as far as lot plan. So we anticipate in some period of time, not as quick as we'd like, but some of those units will be approved. So the point is, you know, there's a whole group of developers, you know, and Mitchell will tell you, you know, he can poll his membership. There's, you know, maybe 20 or 30% of his guys want to do this stuff. There's a bunch who don't, you know, and there's some that, you know, maybe even some other groups that you're part of, Dave, that are really hostile to some of these ideas. That's okay, you know, it's like, you know what, you need a mix. Long Island isn't just going to be about TOD, it's not just going to be about conventional development. We need them both. But, you know, to be into the downtowns now, it's a good time. Office vacancy rates are lower in downtowns than in office parks. We're seeing groups like Launchpad and Mineola stepping up. High-tech companies want to be in the downtown. In Mineola and also in Huntington, they're looking to be in other places. You know, they're looking to be in Hicksville, even though one of the gentlemen left. It still doesn't mean there aren't high-tech companies who want to be in downtown areas. We're seeing arts, music, and culture really take over a lot of the downtowns. So you're seeing theaters pop up. You know, I always say my favorite moment in development on Long Island is when I'm in the Paramount. I think of my favorite band, Korn, one of my favorite bands. Mosh pit at Korn. I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'm in my downtown, and you know, a great show. But Westbury Theaters has stepped up. The space at Westbury, Riverhead's got a theater, Patchogue, Bayshore, and there are other places that want them. So arts, music, culture. We're seeing a lot more events in the downtowns, largely due to staycations from families and such. But seeing, you know, movie nights, and parades, and more than normal. It's just the downtowns are active. Most of the downtowns are active. So again, the housing piece is working. It's being subsidized by the IDAs in some cases where you need to have it happen. The good news is Nassau IDA in the last just couple of years, they've done more than the prior 10 years as far as supporting housing, and it's like 1,200 units or so on 5 projects that Ed McGanno stepped forward. You know, we heard the whole Cool Downtown speech for a number of years, but we heard the speech, but now we're actually seeing things get done, you know, and that's exciting. We're seeing restaurants, niche retail, fill some of the spaces where the traditional retailers have kind of pulled out. Just the retail in general is that market is challenged. So that's positive. I hear, you know, we hear about the young people. I mean, it's really the aging baby boomers that are filling up a lot of these housing right now, because the young people still want to be in Brooklyn, and you know, they want to be in Williamsburg, they want to be in Red Hook, they want to be in, you know, Dumbo, you know, or they want to be in their college town or someplace in Jersey or Hoboken, like Hoppin, you know. So we still need to do more to capture the lifestyle for younger folks. And we're not going to do that overnight. It's going to take a while to make enough of our downtowns function so that we can capture that type of entrepreneur that is going to, and some of it's just changing office spaces where you rent a $300 desk. You know, it's a whole different profile of entrepreneur that's coming online, and there are different types of jobs that may not be here, they may be in other more urbanized areas.
The launch pads.
Launch pad is exactly, and again, trying to get those viable. So, so that's the piece. Then the other piece I'd say, you know, the other part of TOD is back to the Ditches piece, is the transit. And while we're waiting, and we'll continue to wait, because I guess they're over budget East Side access, you know, so, but at some point there will be some form of East Side access. What we do know is that we have to keep fighting, we were just in Albany yesterday, for our fair share for this region of our transportation dollars. We don't get them. We got to fight with the feds. We got to fight with the state. And we also, it's not just about roadways, but transit, but it's also about walking areas. You know, we had a Suffolk legislator who said, you shouldn't ride a bike, you shouldn't walk, it's dangerous, just don't do it, stay in your home. Which is kind of done. So, and I would say that there has been a certain element of Long Islanders who have been joyfully hostile to people walking and biking. I remember you drive around and you know, it's points, you know, if you hit somebody, it's points, you know. And it's a joke, it's just a terrible thing, but that's what the mindset we have here, sometimes the undercurrent of that's about. And some of that mindset is in employees that work in some of these engineering departments in our state and our county. You know, we got to shift out of that. And the good news is there's a whole lot more folks who want to redo our roadways safer, want to do traffic calming, want to do the bike lane. Some of this stuff's cheap. It's not, doesn't cost a lot to do a median, some plantings, you know, some safe crosswalks. I mean, guys, you know, this is simple stuff. So I raise this because I know we're talking about TOD, we're talking about real estate, but if you don't have the infrastructure and the accoutrements that make a place safe, welcoming, desirable to walk and get out of your car, we can't design walkable communities, and we have the housing element, we have the land use element, but it's dangerous to walk out your door. So we need to think along those lines, and you know, we need to push our electeds a little better, and actually some of the bureaucrats behind them to make some changes. I'll stop. I'll go on and on and on.
Yeah, I just want to push elected
We got
so far.
finance together.
Eric, if I may, I'm among other hats that I wear outside of business. I'm an elected official, trustee of the Village of Brignet, as you know. Certainly under the state mandates that local governments have imposed upon them, certainly the tax cap. I think people can hear me. You can hear me?
No.
I don't need to.
No, you know what it is? They can't hear because of the fans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, get them.
Boy, if I knew I'd make such a fuss, I wanted to send it. It better be real good.
We're gonna make you
I withdraw my question. That's all I have to say. You know, but because of the mandates and quite frankly, the tax cap that municipalities have to operate under, tax spending environments for municipalities are very restricted. And I don't think you'll find one municipal public official disagreeing with you on what could be done or what should be done, and it's a matter of how it gets done. So I agree with everything that's been said so far. I can tell you in Great Neck, Great Neck Plaza, Mitch, which I know you were, I guess, alluding to earlier. There's a significant amount of transit-oriented development going on, has been for several years now. In my own village of Great Neck, Avalon Bay, we have just rezoned a portion of East Shore Road. Avalon Bay is coming in with a 191-unit rental project, high-end, but they're also setting aside 20% for Long Island workforce housing. We're rezoning Middle Neck Road, we're rezoning Steamboat Road. But one of the things that's enabling us to accomplish what Eric here correctly suggested is something that hasn't been discussed yet, and I'd like to see if you guys want to respond to it. And that is the use of impact fees, where developers, and we're realizing that now, certainly realizing it with Avalon Bay,
Talk in the microphone,
where
please.
developers negotiate with the respective municipalities a sum of money that goes into a trust account, and the proceeds of which, under state law, can be used for capital projects within the municipality. So I'd like to know how
Mitch wants.
that, I know.
I will tell you, Jerry.
Wait, here comes the mic.
Be careful. Be careful. Under a variety of Court of Appeals decisions in New York State, impact fees are illegal in New York
You're
State.
using the wrong word.
It sounds nicer than bribery.
That's right, or extortion, which is what we call it sometimes. So, and I'm not arguing the point one way or the other. Obviously, there are community benefits that a developer, in return for increased density or incentive, pays, and that's the legal way to do it under state law.
That's what we're doing.
Right, but the aspect of it is that the benefits provided have to have some relation to the project itself. You can't build something 10 miles away.
Correct.
That, I think most developers understand, because they're getting, I don't want to say something for it, it's a mutual benefit to both sides. Okay, and Avalon Bay has been, did that in Rockville Center, they did that in Huntington Station, and I'm sure they'll do it in Great Neck in that regard. So it's it's a combination of both. There have been a number of municipalities which have tried to expand the definition and the delineation of it, and we have objected to that, and I think rightly so. But as long as there's a connection to the project and a benefit to both sides, then
absolutely. I wasn't
then the issue is the relationship between the two
I wasn't
entities.
suggesting otherwise.
Yeah.
There would have to be a relationship,
Yeah.
and it has to be done according to law.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a Supreme Court decision that came out last year that raised a couple of eyebrows, and it was the Coons decision. And what it involved was this very issue. It was a Florida project where they were asking the developer in return for approval or relaxation to get, they requested or required him to do construction at an alternate location several miles away from the site. What it came down to was they wanted to ensure that there's nexus, which Mitch is talking about, the nexus of what you're asking for to the project, and proportionality, that you're not asking for too much for too little. The mechanism in New York State, we do have in the village law, town law, city law, incentive zoning provisions that municipalities can enact for density. What I think would be even more appealing, developers will have a hard time if you're telling them that you're going to get certain density bonuses or whatnot based on a payment or providing additional fire, fire facilities or vehicles or improving a park. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think what would make it more appealing is something that Dave alluded to earlier, is the fact that most projects on Long Island, it's not a matter of cost so much, it's a matter of delay and timing. And if you could put an incentive zoning package together that doesn't only address density type issues of bulk requirements, that says, you know what, if you go into this plan, you'll get increased density, but we're going to make sure that you're going to have a hearing within 45 days. You're going to meet with our professionals from day one and get a clear understanding of what the project is, how it can work, so that you can streamline the process. Because projects that just linger for on and on, is really one major hurdle for development on Long Island. Even in the retail sector, we do a lot of work with the ICSC. They have a convention every year. It's a shopping center convention. And all of the major retailers from across the country come to this convention, and they talk about sites that they're looking to develop and whatnot. Every horror story that you hear from these retail developers are, you don't want to do anything in the New York metropolitan area, you don't want to do anything on Long Island. It takes years instead of months. It's costly, it's expensive, the public comes out on every project, etc. Then you ask them, where do you want to be? Long Island. And it's crazy because even though it's going to be difficult, and even though there's a lot of problems for development on Long Island, every major retailer, every restaurant, chain restaurant wants to be on Long Island. We have all the right demographics, we have all the right income models. It is the perfect place to grow a business. And it's a balance between the two. But I think if you get an incentive zoning package that also includes that timing element, making it so that if you do X, Y, and Z, and it meets the secret requirements and the environmental concerns, everything is taken into account, that you can get your project done, I think that would make it even more
And I just
appealing.
want to add, we have progressed so far on Long Island. This year, we're going to get not only a Dairy Queen, but a Chick-fil-A. That shows you the progress we are making on Long Island in the last year, because for those of us who travel in different places, they are the best. Just a side note.
No DQ.
I have a question, and perhaps it's naive, but we are 6 years past the crash and 20 years since Nassau County has been suffocated by taxes. Conversation seems to be very similar. Why hasn't things been done?
Well, there hasn't been a lot done. There's a lot of projects that we were talking about over the 20 years that are now seeing fruition, like, talking of, Ronkonkoma, Edgewood, Huntington Station, Wyandanch, and the hub over in Nassau, and all these different things. There's been a lot of education that's needed to happen, and, the reason, David Leno said that everybody wants to be here, because it's such a high barriers to entry here that it knocks out a lot of the competition. So, that's why they need to be here. We're very under retail relative to, Jersey, Connecticut, Westchester. I think we have like 25 or 22 square feet per person, where these other areas have 35 to 40 square feet per person. We're in a time right now where we finally are seeing, and we might see it more so because we know the projects that are queued up. But Patchogue is another success. Mineola, is also another success. We've got 9-story apartment buildings that are going up over there, and there was a concerted effort by how many mayors ago? 3 mayors ago over there to do this, and each one has picked it up and has brought moved the line a bit down the path. But they're under construction.
But even that seems like a long time. 3 mayors ago, that's a long time.
That was 2 mayors ago, it was Jack once.
Oh, 2 mayors ago.
Yeah, it was Jack that's.
So how long is that? Was that it?
No, it was an abominable amount of time. What I'm saying is there are things that are happening now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is very active now.
I just have another.
And remember, 7 of the top 10 grossing 7-Elevens in this country are on Long Island. 7 of the 10.
That's right.
Okay?
Montauk, number 1.
Montauk is number 1. I couldn't believe that when I saw that. But I said, goodness gracious, that guy's got some business.
He markets the coffee there very well.
But I just want to say, I know we talk a lot about big projects, but of the 7,800 units that, transit development units that have been approved, the bulk of them are the smaller projects, under 200 units. There's only, I think, 3 of them that are more than 200 units. So we're talking about 35 small projects where the communities have not been fighting. We all hear about community resistance to everything. quite frankly, a lot of the rules that get in the way aren't locally driven by villages. They're mandates by the state, and sometimes the county health department in cases, a lot of places in Suffolk County. So I think sometimes in the press we hear about this, oh, these local villages can't get done, everything's delayed, da-da-da. Actually, villages are probably the best example. Mineola are the best example of coming to consensus because
Mostly fishing for them?
I can't. I remember the night of the village hearing, Jack Martin's. I couldn't believe I went down. He's like, "Come down and support." I'm like, "Okay." So I come down and support the project, and because it's for the 9-story building, and he's like, so I see all seniors there. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a rough night." No disrespect to everybody's seniors. And to a person, they supported it. One guy from Garden City came in and said the psychological impact of a tall building is going to bother me, but I tried to think through that. That was a little strange. What's the public benefit for that? Therapist? Psychological impact. No, but seriously, the villages come to consensus because in short order, a mayor, good mayor, can talk to everyone in town, and over the course of a weekend, or the course of a weekend, they can assemble all their quote-unquote special districts that are supposedly the worst thing on Long Island, but they can put the sewer district, the water district, the fire district, all together and make a decision, as opposed to in a big municipality, you go back and forth between your insurance department, your lawyers, and all the people that are afraid of making a decision. So I just want to throw that out there to say that sometimes it does take time. In Mineola, they did a major parking structure, Winthrop, and 2 very tall buildings that they had to sort out. And it took some time. They did a master plan, but they did it right. Now a lot of things are going to come easier. There's going to be a hotel, launch pads there, some other smaller developments that have come on the way. So sometimes it takes a while to do the master plan, but then things come in.
And I think the point is also not only leadership in a village can move things together, but so can sewers. Okay? Almost every place we've talked about that have had success has either their own sewers or their own sewage treatment plant, and you cannot imagine how that reduces the effect of the project and the cost and the length of time it takes. And that's why those villages that have that have been out front, I think it's fair to say, more easier than others. That doesn't mean others are not trying, but in certain places they're handicapped by some things that are, that they now have to solve. People ask all the time, why is Patchogue up front? I said, in addition to the mayor, he's got his own sewage treatment plant. So whatever, he doesn't have to go to the health department and say, now I need 30,000 gallons for this. He just opens a spigot and 30,000 gallons flow, and you cannot imagine how much easier that is, as we all know.
I just want to throw a question out there. This could be for you, Andrew. Is the fact that we're talking about a lot of different projects.
I thought you were financing all these projects.
We've been talking about a lot of different projects, whether it's multifamily residential, whether it's retail, what have you. What is your sweet spot as far as lending on Long Island, and what do you see being the hot trends as far as, what are you looking for as far as your future borrowers on Long Island this year?
Real easy, Pete. We've got a lot of proposed lending development deals for multifamily, for single development, for projects like this. And everybody seems, because of all the issues you've talked about, if someone came to me and said, I want to build another strip mall, it's like, not really, maybe. You got to be really well heeled. You got to, finance it yourself. Maybe we'll give you a few dollars. But almost all of the multifamily or some type of residential type dwelling developments have pretty much been green-lighted. And if you look at it from a lending perspective, even still the multifamily buildings in Queens, Brooklyn, the insurance companies are almost giving the money away to finance these buildings. They're still 10, 15 years at 3%, 3.25%. It's like stealing money. It's free. And multi-million, tens of hundreds of millions of dollar deals. And then the same building around the corner is the retail center where they're all going to shop. And it's okay, we'll give you the same deal, 5% for 5 years. But my buddy got 3.25 for 15. Yeah, he's got a 30-unit apartment building. It's a whole different animal. Everyone needs to live somewhere. And because of that, the financing is a lot more aggressive. They're not as aggressive in other areas. So I've been involved. I got a guy, I know the guy that owns the building You talk about how it gets the grassroots, owns the building in Ronkonkoma, and he can't rent it out because no one wants to sign a lease in the retail space, because as soon as Brookhaven decides, or whatever municipality is, decides that day they're gonna agree to the deal, he's gotta throw his tenants out. And like, I'm not gonna build out the building, and so he's got a vacant corner lot that he's waiting for. And it just throws everybody off. And back to your question, there's parking lots. What's the tax rate on a parking lot is like $1. You know, you put a multi-story building on it, the tax rate's now 200 grand. You know, if you look at New York City, is going around to all the vacant spots. Not that there's a lot in Manhattan, but more uptown, there's vacant spots. And they're telling the property owner, we're gonna now tax you, because we think you could build a 40-story building here worth X amount of dollars, and the tax rate should be $175,000. That's your new tax bill. Build it, or come and fight it. And all the tertiary guys are fighting, saying, well, it's still land, and I can't get proving and zoning, so knock my tax back down to $1. But some people are just paying it. So the point is, the tax rate, the money would come. You build it, and they will come. That's why I laugh when they fight these seniors. So what, the one in Plainview, they were till 3 in the morning fighting it?
Yeah.
It's 55 and over. They're gonna pay tax bills, they're gonna pay school tax, and no one's going to school. How do you lose?
I think we have a question on the other side of the room.
What do I-
Do we?
Yeah.
So all we have, okay.
Thank you. You know, I have a question. You know, everyone's talking about, everyone mentions they. So they say, you know, those guys aren't doing enough building. Those guys are doing too much building. Those guys are doing this. You know, it's interesting, they. They is, you know, Eric, it's all different. You know, there's so many theys out there, but everybody generalizes, and they that generalizes is us. It's all of us. And everyone like us, who is everyone out there. Who's out there? Well, you know, it's funny, they say that, oh, the business people. Well, you know what? The business people, they here, when we go home, now they don't call us business people. What do they call us when we go home at night? Moms and dads, taxpayers, neighbors. We're all the same people. So it's very interesting to me when they say they. So the question I have is, you know, don't you think, and I guess my opinion is that, don't you think that Long Island, one of the reasons they got us into this position over these many, many years is because of, you know, let's face it, on Long Island, the attitudes are so fickle from all of us, they. And I'll give you a prime example. This is just, I think surmises the whole thing. I'm at Line in the movie theater, the new movie theater, it's fairly new, a few years, right? At Tanger and Deer Park. Who's been to Tanger and Deer Park? Okay, almost everybody. If you haven't, you're crazy. First of all, the best movie theater on Long Island. All right, it's up. They have ice skating there now in the middle. Do you know that they have an ice skating rink? In the summer, it flows with the water. It's gorgeous, right? Now, was anybody at any of those meetings when they were trying to get this approved? And by the way, it was the town of Babylon. Okay, at those meetings, there were people people getting arrested. There were like fist fights and people pushing and shoving and screaming and cursing. And seriously, I know because I was there. I was standing in the middle of some of these meetings. And now let's jump to, from all that, and this went on for a number of years, by the way. Now let's jump to not so long ago, in the past, I'm online in the movie theater with my wife. I hear a couple behind us. There actually were two couples, 2 women, 2 men, right behind us. And the conversation, real quick, was that, you know, I can't believe this movie theater, and I was just about to say something, and I didn't turn around, and I turned back, and she goes, what do you mean? I says, oh, this movie theater is gorgeous, and yada yada. I can't believe they didn't build this movie theater sooner. And then the other woman says, you know what, I didn't want it at first, oh, I thought they were crazy, and the husband said, oh, with all the traffic and all the usual, you know, the traffic and the people and, you know, the time and all the usual things, right? So I'm listening to this, now they're going on to rave about it, and then I was going to say something again, but then one of the women says, and you know what was the deal with the BJs? Now, for those of you who don't know, probably only a few of us here know the deal. they finally approved it, and they crossed out the BJ's. They said no BJ's, and then we're going to approve it. They approved Tanger. Tanger gets built. Now, there's no BJ's. Now getting back to this woman and one of the couples says, and I can't believe it took so long for the BJ's to get built. And one says, oh, I love the new BJ's. It's great. It's right here. I can go to BJ's, go to Chipotle, go see a movie. Oh, it's great. Go to Home Depot right next door. Everything's right here. I love it. Other woman says, you know, why didn't they make this place bigger? Because now it's like, you know, it's small now. And then the husband says, and you know what? Now they built the friggin' BJ's. They didn't put gas at this BJ's. And so I'm listening to this now. My wife is smart. She's like, don't you say a word. And I'm like just waiting to jump in. But every time I'm ready to jump in, the conversation continues. So finally the other woman says, you know what? Who can we write to? You know, that BJ's is too small. I said, okay, that's it. I said to my wife, I'm sorry. I turned around. I said, ladies, I said, guys, I said, I'm so glad you're here online going to the movies. But I have to ask you, I said, you like the movies? I heard, right? Oh, of course. I like the BJ's, yes. And the husband, while I'm saying it, says, but there's no gas. I said, I'm with you. I got to go to 110 of Freeport to fill up. By the way, best kept gas secret on Long Island until I just mentioned it to you, right? It's phenomenal. Cheapest gas. So I said, I got a question though. Do you live in the area? Yes. And I said, okay. Where were you guys when we were trying to get this approved? And I got to tell you, I can tell by some other comments they made, they were one of the ones that were ready to give somebody a right hook at that meeting because of traffic and all this other kind of stuff. And now they love it. And now Tanger's too small, BJ's doesn't have gas. The BJ's, it is smaller than the usual BJ's. They want it bigger. And then they said, you know what? It would have been nice if they took over more space and had another parking lot, because sometimes it's packed there on a Friday and Saturday night. And Sunday, they're getting, parents with the kids strolling around the park. So this is the attitude, in my opinion, with us, of what goes on. And, you know, my philosophy is this should have been the way BJ's, the way Tanger looks in Deer Park. This is the way, like Florida's been building these kind of operations and malls and outlets 20 years ago. They had it 20 years ago, right? I mean, we know because we go to Florida and we see them, and we come back and they go, how was your trip? Oh, it was great. I went to this new outlet mall down here, and it was beautiful. I went to the movies, saw a concert at the outlet mall. I come back here, and it takes us forever to do anything because of us, and a fickle attitude. And by the way, was there traffic at Tanger? Yes, the 2 weeks. And all the naysayers were saying, oh my God, I told you all this traffic, it was crazy. Yes, well, you know what? In the business world, when you have a grand opening, you hope that there are lines out your door of your store. Well, the lines were from Deer Park down Comac Road to the LIE. I saw it, my wife was bitching, and I'm like, this is a beautiful thing, honey. And by the way, 2 weeks went by, no more traffic, nobody goes down Deer Park Avenue, they go down Comac Road. Everybody, all my friends who were yelling about it, they were the first ones there to shop for Hanukkah and Christmas gifts. We love it, and by the way, I live right down the road from Tanger, and it is phenomenal, and we just need to change the fickle attitude. My opinion.
Okay, but can you get there with the bus?
From Fidel Castro.
Yes. What's that, Ernie?
I thought he was filibustering.
I
I said I heard the shortest speeches from Fidel Castro.
I'll be much briefer. Basically, a couple of things. I have a 26-year-old that moved to Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and that's because that's where the young people want to be. We have to look, and I grew up in Brooklyn where I didn't want to be there. So obviously, things can turn around, and it's great that we're doing projects to revitalize different communities. And going back to what he said is, maybe we need more of a marketing strategy, because if they interviewed those people, I would have somebody saying, I don't want a mall, and then go, wow, this mall is beautiful, and it's perception. And I think the key may be, we're in a society of YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. We have the opportunity to get the word out that people didn't want this, now look at it. So, I mean, you could actually go and interview those same people and say, did you want this mall? No, I thought it was traffic. Now look at it now. You know, and use those projects that are completed to actually take the naysayers and say, you know what, we heard this all before, and now we've done studies and gone back, and boy, are they happy, and boy, and actually they preferred it was bigger, and it's great for the community because there's jobs for our young people. Who's working at Chipola's? Who's working at the Home Depot? It's not the 50-year-olds, it's the 20 and 30-year-olds that are working their way into the companies that are happy to have a job. And the reason my daughter lives in Brooklyn, she's working in Manhattan. So absolutely, the jobs have to come, and we do have to incentivize them, but I think we need to build a marketing campaign that says, look, we've done it, it's working, we have to do it more, and then it's gonna be a lot easier to push down public opinion, the naysayers. I live in Elwood, and they don't want the Elwood Road, stop the traffic on Elwood Road.
It's always a
And-
big issue.
They're selling
cows.
They're selling cows. And I think it's ludicrous, because you know what you can't stop technology. Ernie knows that. It's gonna come eventually because it's gotta come. And they're gonna stop progress because it's not in my backyard. I live there, and I think it's ridiculous because my kids are not gonna live in Long Island because there is no rental. And they don't wanna live in my basement. It's really small. So we definitely have to do this. And as our generation is getting older, we want our children to stay here. And it's sad that so many young people have to live at home just because rent is, crazy.
I mean, I would say, jump in on this. What we tell most municipalities is to put in their budgets, public opinion poll. And maybe the developer is applying has to pay for that or something through the application, I don't know. But they should really verify where people are at on this, because the 10 people who show up at a meeting and it's supposedly it's all these NIMBYs.
That's not the majority.
But yeah, the sad part is, because look, you have a right to voice your opposition. We believe strongly in community planning. People should be involved in these decisions. Having said that, most of the time, I know I might get in trouble with some of the developers in the room on this, but I always get in trouble. Most of the time, projects go down, not because of the 50 people who showed up at the meeting. There's other forces at play, where some other developer really wants to build the same thing a mile down the road, so he kind of got involved, or she got involved, mostly he got involved and made sure that something stopped, and the 50 people who showed up.
Don't go blaming D'Amato.
No, but it's not really always about the 50 people who show up screaming. But there isn't enough education. There isn't enough time spent in bringing positive people out. And I tell everybody who goes to regional meetings, there's a lot of us that go to all these, when someone's going to these road shows, all these different regional meetings, this regional group, and we're a vision, the same thing. We were a regional group, but we're only as good as the community people. Right, we are. I mean, we've done 1,900 public outreach meetings. But the point is, the strength is on the grassroots, the civics, the chambers, and the local government. So our message is, everyone who lives in a community, to Rich, your point, should join their local civic or join their local chamber and be active on that level, because that's where decisions get made. And decisions are made by people who show up too. So you want to get positive people. If 20 people showed up in a local civic in Elwood, that would change the tenor of the Elwood community. So people need to mobilize locally. We've spent a lot of time now trying to get regional entities to squash local input. That's not going to work. Long Island is a community of communities. People care about their place. And you know what? Sometimes to slow things down, that's a good thing. It's because some projects do have real impacts. But the point is, people should be organized locally and part of these.
And they need to speak their view, not go into a civic and just listen to the 10 loudest civics. And you're just, because they're like, oh, wait a minute.
You live there. You got a right to
I want to join you guys, but you know what? I don't agree with what you're screaming out there. We're going to speak your piece and try to bring it together.
I think things have changed, though. I mean, to your point about marketing efforts, as a zoning and land use practitioner, one of the first things we'll do on a project is assess who we can tie into in the local community. Like Eric was saying, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the politicians, whether it's a school district, what have you, to find mainly just to put the
project out there, because the biggest opponent of any project is fear. And when you don't put a message out there and it's not clear and people don't know what's happening and what's being built and all they hear is what's presented at the meetings from your traffic expert and what have you, it does not resonate. People want a story. They want to know what's going on, what's the background, and they want to not have that fear. It's the fear that drives people to get angry.
And if they
at-
just
at
sense that fear, the answer is no.
So that's
They say,
something.
Can I just,
That's what the media
I just add that I
Media wants
think
them.
it's not only about that. I think it's trust.
It's trust.
The source of the information has to be a trusted source. I mean, who really knows where the information is
That's
coming
what kills
from?
you at Avalon and Huntington Station.
We live in such a
Crazy
spin
trust.
society that, you know, you can look, somebody can say the sky is black and make a great case for it, and you walk away saying, wow, you know, it always looked blue to me, but I guess I was wrong. I mean, people, I live near the Zero Wire site. And for years, I've been there for 12 years, for years I hear back and forth, and I sit there and I'm like, whatever they do there has got to be better than this huge open hole in the ground. I mean, it's just, it's horrible. But your neighbors are telling you that it's a terrible thing, but you don't know who told them, and you don't know why. You know, and even when you go to do a little bit of research, you don't know what the source of the information is. I mean, trust is a real foundation thing, and unless you have it, you don't have anything.
It's like a game of bad telephone, you know, you don't hear ambulance.
That's why I go back to the marketing. You actually have to have a really good marketing strategy.
Nobody trusts it.
Because
Trust it.
pictures, using social media. I mean, how many people here use your LinkedIn and Facebook to get the word out? If those same people that are
Did you
trying-
tag yourself here and tell everybody what you're talking about?
You know, and what happens is, I think, as municipalities and towns understand the power of that, because yes, I could be in front of the room and be vocal as no, 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 but if there is a clip behind me that shows all the positives, shows the water fountain, shows the ice skating rink, shows the movie theater, that's easily negated, because visual, they say, oh, is that what it's going to look like, as opposed to what their imagination thinks.
Mitch, correct me, the LIA, and I believe in concert with some other organizations, some years back, may rest in peace when Matt was charged, ran a very focused marketing campaign against Long Island. I forgot what the imprimatur was, but it was somewhat effective. Effective in terms of the campaign, of the feel of it, the attempt at branding. Ultimately, it really didn't work.
Can I add something?
And there was a lot of money put into that. So
I'm going to add something here, an experience that none of you have ever had. It happened in my childhood. When Robert Moses was building Kennedy Airport, which was then New York International, prior to that, Iowa, there was a poor community there of farmers and fishermen that had to be displaced. What they did was they gave these people $500 and told them they were out of here, eminent domain. If they didn't leave, they put a cable around their houses and pulled them off with a garbage truck. Now these were, pretty crummy houses, but these were poor people. They had no place to go. People who, like me, who have seen that kind of municipal behavior are very suspect. And I think some of that's still residual in our minds, even if you didn't have that experience yourself. And we don't trust big entities, big corporations, governments for that reason. That's why we have, I think, a residual problem. That happened numerous times in the Moses administration. They bulldozed right through the Bronx, destroyed Maspeth in Queens, and they wanted to build a road down Fire Island. If you go to Field 5, you see the dead end. That was supposed to go to the Shirley Bridge, destroy all those communities, one of which I had a house in for many, many years. And we needed to stop that sort of thing, and I think that's the kind of thing that's still residual in people's minds. And I really don't know how to give you an answer, but I think it is a lot of communications. But if you understand what happened over time, you know why you have a problem today.
There are more and more developers. I have a project that we were brokering for the school district, and we started a Facebook page and to reach out to the community. Because some of the problems you see, if there's not a good source of information, then there's bad sources of information. So very quickly, like with the Avalon Bay, they had the Say No to Avalon Bay site, and there was a lot of misinformation put up there. So the...
Both sides.
Yeah. So there's a lot, if you have a source, now you need to hire a marketing firm, a PR firm, when you're starting a project to go into the town. You do need the local government there with you to support, because you do need that trust. It can't just come from the developer. It has to be, vetted a little bit by the municipality, so that when they're coming out making presentations, so it is a trust thing. Facebook does work, well on the front end.
Can I just finish that thought I was on? When Moses wanted to build that road down Fire Island, it was my organization that was created to stop him. And the only way we could stop him was because he had more power than the governor of the state of New York. We had to go to Congress and have a law made so that became a national seashore, and then he had no jurisdiction anymore. And that's how we stopped it. Sometimes you have to do drastic measures. I don't know that any of the things we're talking about would lend itself to that kind of action. But, the problem with Moses is that he thought he was Moses.
Mr. Moses covered both sides of the...
That's why they low bridges, so the buses can't get to Joe Beach. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Where that hard left turn.
Absolutely true.
I'm thrilled to...
But it goes both ways, that's the point.
I'm thrilled to hear the term TOD. Should I speak?
The opportunities at Cold Spring Harbor train station?
I'm thrilled to hear the term TOD. I don't know when it was coined, but I grew up in Brooklyn, and in my experience, like you, there was no word TOD. It was, is it TOD? It's not TOD.
Yeah, transit-oriented development.
Okay, TOD. The whole borough was TOD. We were able to get around, we weren't so car-centric. So my question is, I'm just wondering if the fact that that is a term and a type of development, does that mean we've moved away from the fear of Long Island, Nassau County specifically, of being the sixth borough?
I'd say, answer this first, I don't know if people are at on this, but we do polling every other year on what people's attitudes are in relationship to mixed-use development. And when we first did the poll, where do you prefer to live? It was 30% wanted to live in a downtown area or adjacent to a downtown area. It's now up to 45%, and that's in over the last 10 years. So we've inched up. There's still 55% of Long Islanders who want to live in a residential-only neighborhood, and we do also polls in relationship to the where people want to shop, and people still now want to shop in big box stores, though the downtowns are creeping back up. So the point is, the type of stuff a group like ours is selling, and again, TOD, that term started in the late 90s, right after smart growth. But I think some real applications came in like around 04 or 05. So it's been with us a while, and other stuff's new.
I don't think we've embraced it.
Right. I don't think the majority's embraced it. Having said that, there are pockets of areas on Long Island that are, I was asked to come to speak at a rally in Baldwin, the Baldwin Civic, for smart growth, right? And it's raining. I'm like, I'm really going to come to this rally and speak about smart. Like, really? Like, who's at this rally? And I was like, who are these people? And there's 100 people there, and I'm like, in the rain. And they don't stop. They got a meeting tonight. They're going to pack the cafeteria in their school.
That's when you know they care.
People, there are pockets of people. The community is not the problem. You got to work with the community. But there are pockets in different communities on Long Island. There's about 45 different communities on Long Island that actively have real live people, not freaks, not kooks, but real legitimate people who are getting things done. Oh, my video, this is going to be brutal. For Barbara,
Can you be a little more specific? We're not starting the release of this video.
Yeah. So the point is that my point is that there are places across the island who really want this stuff. And my message to the state officials, we were up and away, let's prioritize infrastructure and support to the places that want it. And then those land use wars that we've been having for years, leave them alone. Like, why fight when you don't need to fight? Let's put resources in investment in the places where the people want to grow.
Well, my point was,
That's our message.
my point was really to mention that is that it's not just transit to get Long Islanders into New York.
Right.
It's to get people on Long Island and people within Long Island moving around.
We still make bad decisions,
My
okay?
grown children who have, I specifically, as someone who grew up right by the subways, practically going through my apartment in Brooklyn, selectively chose to move to a house that I liked right by the Woodmere train station. And my kids were little at the time, and now they're in their 20s and they're going out, and you know, who knows when they're coming home, but you know what? It's right there.
The train is there.
And my kids are, you know, I'm not going to get into a whole Coliseum discussion of it.
Well, that's a perfect discussion.
But
Yeah.
my son said, well, that's great, they're going to build, you know, they're going to build all of these, you know, bars and places and all that, but I got to drive there. I don't want to go there, drink, and drive home.
And yet,
I want to be able to take
and yet there is a rail line 500 feet from the Coliseum, the current Coliseum and the new Coliseum, it's going to be in the same spot.
Right.
And the only mammals that can get there at the moment are the circus elephants. The elephants
They just
get to
walk
the
through.
Coliseum by train. Nobody else does. Okay? Which is an abomination. The railroad line is 500 feet from the Coliseum. And when I mentioned that to Mr. Ratner, I thought he was going to fall off his chair, because he realizes what that means, because anybody who's been to Barclays Center, okay?
We've been there.
You
as a
walk
family.
across you're underground from the railroad and across the street from 7 subway lines, and he realizes what that would mean to what he's trying to do at the Coliseum. And yet we are, you know, we're stuck in it, you know, we can't reopen. I almost got yelled at when I suggested we reopen the line, because it unfortunately goes through an area that doesn't want trains going through their area, which is...
I got 3 train stations.
That's right, they got 3 train stations, right? But they want, right, so it's an abomination of what we let happen. But we're not done.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a mention about a resource that seems to be going unrecognized. There is a wealth of properties that go unused because they're compromised. The polluted areas, and even the gentleman from the Great Neck area, where Avalon Bay is going to be building, where they have this huge pollution problem right now. I've spoken to everybody in that government, and my solution to that problem has been going completely ignored. But we have a biological solution to remediate properties that used to be valuable. They were polluted, and now they're valueless. Okay, and the reason that they remain valueless is because they cost more to clean than they're worth if they were in their pristine condition. Which is the reason that my company developed the technology that we developed, to be able to clean pieces of property and make them valuable and valuable once again for a very small fraction of what it would cost in the conventional means of digging it up and trying to haul it away to a landfill. Okay? You have thousands of acres of property that could be reclaimed in areas, and I'm fascinated by the way that just in general the technology is being ignored. And I just don't understand.
Long Island has the smallest number of properties in the state brownfield redevelopment program. The smallest number. You can get tax credits up to kazoo from the state of New York to redevelop a site. The reason is not because you can't clean up the site with your technology or whatever. You can't redevelop the site because many municipalities would rather have a contaminated site exist than the redevelopment that occurs. Perfect example, town of Hempstead Island Park, okay? Where they turned down an Avalon Bay 191 unit fair market rental project. And all they were asking for was rentals. They'd already gotten approvals for the project. They turned it down, okay? And now what they're left with? Was it 15 acres? 15 acres of contaminated site. They'd rather have that than the apartments.
Well, let's be clear, that they approved condos on it.
Right.
They didn't want to switch it to the rental.
Right, because they were afraid of people
But the other
making
piece of it is the
$5,000.
state brownfields program is completely, I mean, layers and layers of bureaucracy. There's a brownfield planning component that has achieved nothing, but wastes time and lots of planning. So the governor is good in saying, let's scrap all these plans that are leading you. They don't get you through a secret.
No, I know.
You know, they don't get you anywhere. They don't move to the front of the line by doing an extra plan.
Right.
So why are we doing this?
I mean,
It's just, it's
Right,
like.
And the stuff is still leaching.
Right.
The Grumman's only getting bigger.
Yeah, well, that's what we're right now, my company is in the process of talking to Northrop Grumman about cleaning up the ball field. Because I told them, unless you cut the head of the snake off, that plume is going to continue. They don't want to spend $180 million. Okay, but as I mentioned to David, the whole thing with Sarbanes-Oxley Act, where the whole thing where some part of the, I imagine the whole crux of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was to get more private influx of public money rather than government money to try to clean up sites. Problem was that Congress, in their infinite wisdom, didn't realize that they had absolutely no impact on the cost. Okay, they were going to shift the pollution, liability only to the polluter and not the person who was going to bring it up. But they had nothing whatsoever to do with the cost of it. And the fact that the cost is greater than the property's value, it accomplished nothing. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why my company developed what we developed, so that we could cut the cost of it to a very, very small fraction. Okay, and I think part of the problem is that there have been so many rogues and charlatans and snake oil salesmen, fairy dust peddlers, that say that when they mention a biological approach, and they say, yeah, we've heard that story. None of that stuff really works.
Let's put it this way: the silliest thing done to Cyril Wire property was that they actually cleaned it up.
Yeah.
Except that was the worst thing that they could have done.
But the reason that they didn't have to move one shovelful of that dirt from that site, because that's what we do.
It doesn't matter. I'm not a dividend. The worst thing they did about redeveloping that site is they actually cleaned it up. Because there's no incentive now to let anybody do anything to it because it already got cleaned up. Regardless of what you're going to put there. Doesn't matter what you're going to put there. The worst thing they did was clean it up. As a result of that, we've now waited 15 years to do something. Whatever something is. It would have been a lot better if they had.
The only thing I can tell you is that you have a tremendous lack of imagination.
It may be true.
I'd like to interrupt this conversation and tell you that it's over.
The library's
It will never be over. Please really, I want to give our thanks to Carter, DeLuca, Farrell, and Schmidt for being our sustaining supporters, and with Ruskin, Moscow, and Faltashek, who are also sustaining supporters, and Mark Newart. Are you still here? Thank you so much for your support. Expose Your Business. Please join us March 18th at the Hilton for the Long Island Commercial Real Estate Expo. And thank you so much for a wonderful and lively conversation. It was good.
Thank you, Barbara.